Three, two, one, here we go. Rainman's Take podcast. Observations on the world we live in. My take on current events and other topics of interest. Also, interviews with some really cool people. So let's get the conversation going. Hey everybody, it's the Rain Man. Got another great episode for you today. Before I get into that, a couple things. One, my voice is just a little bit off today, so I apologize. Dealing with some allergies with all the rain that we've had here in California this past winter. The weeds have been going crazy around my house. So I apologize about my voice, and hopefully that gets better soon. And then the other thing I wanted to ask or say before I get started is thank you very much for being a part of Rain Man's Take. For all of you that are active listeners. If you're new to the channel, thank you very much. I know you're going to love the content. So if you could do me a favor, just hit that subscribe button at the bottom right of your screen, and go ahead, if you can, watch this video to the end. That'll help me with the YouTube algorithm, which will help me get this content out to more people and continue the conversation. So with all that being said, I had read an article about Brittany Griner, who's the famous WNBA star, deciding that she's now standing for our national anthem before her basketball games. And I'll just read from an article here real quick about her current situation. And I found this very fascinating and I wanted to comment on it. So this is an article that I saw from Breitbart News website. It was titled Brittany Griner, quote, I definitely want to stand for the national anthem. And this was by Warner Todd Huston from May 21st. And in the article, he says, WNBA star Brittany Griner is finally speaking out personally after her sports rep published an op-ed explaining why she will stand for the national anthem after years of protesting it. On Friday, for the first time in years, Griner stood for the national anthem ahead of the Phoenix Mercury's 94-71 loss against the Los Angeles Sparks. After the game, Griner explained why she stood. According to Fox News, she says, you have the right to protest, the right to be able to speak out, question, challenge, and do all those things. What I went through and everything, it just means a little bit more to me now. So I want to be able to stand. I was literally in a cage in Russia and could not stand the way I wanted to. The article continues, just being able to hear my national anthem, see my flag, I definitely want to stand. Now, everybody that will not stand or not come out, I totally support them 100%. That's our right as an American in this great country, she said. Continuing, I appreciate everything a little bit more, all the small moments, like, oh, I'm so tired, I don't want to go to practice today. That has changed, honestly, she added. Tomorrow is not guaranteed. You don't know what it's going to look like. On Friday, Griner's agent published an op-ed which issued similar reasons that the women's basketball star would stand for the anthem. But after the game was the first time to play her voice her reasoning. This is all a far, far different stance than Griner's only a few years ago. Then, in July of 2020, she rushed to the mics to support the anti-anthem movement and said that the league shouldn't even play it at all, much less stand in honor of it. So, I wanted to comment on her change of heart and kind of what that means, or kind of my take on that. First of all, I am glad that she's out of that Russian hard labor prison. In my view, she has seen just how different and worse the rest of the world is and can be. I dare say she has a new love for the freedoms and opportunity she has today because she was blessed to be born in the United States and has had the opportunity to allow her talents to be recognized and has been compensated very handsomely for that. Now, I don't wish what she was facing on anyone. But the professional athletes who still want to talk about how bad the U.S. is, and right now I'm thinking about LeBron James in particular, who are so blessed and fortunate, I think they would benefit from being out in the world a little bit. And just a little bit more about LeBron here, who is making millions from the NBA and their relationship with China, and how he has, by omission of any protest against China, laid bare his hypocrisy as China is currently conducting racial discrimination and genocide against segments of their population, as well as their barbaric treatment of criminals and anyone who opposes the communist authority. So back to Brittany Griner, and the reason I wanted to comment on our article. The first thing that came to mind when I read it was a passage from James Bradley's book, The Imperial Cruise. The section I want to touch on describes Theodore Roosevelt's father's worldview and how his feeling was that the United States had become over-civilized, and that was not a compliment. So what did he mean by that? I'll read an excerpt from the book. So like I said, the book is called The Imperial Cruise by James Bradley. Okay, so reading from the book. The Roosevelts were true aristocrats. And he talks about Theodore Sr. was worried that his well-born sons might be doomed by this life of luxury, threatened by something what he called over-civilization. The first stage was the savage. The savage was disorganized and useless chaos reigned. The second stage was the barbarian. The barbarian made a valuable contribution to civilization because it was in this Genghis Khan-like stage that the barbarian virtues were formed. Barbarian virtues were the fighting qualities by which a race advanced and protected its flank. In 1899, Governor Theodore Roosevelt of New York wrote to psychologist G. Stanley Hill, and I'm quoting the letter here, "Over-sentimentality, over-softness, and the mushiness are the great dangers of this age and this people. Unless we keep the barbarian virtues, gaining the civilized ones will be of little avail." The third and most desired stage was civilized man, who loved peace, but when provoked, could manifest his barbarian virtues. The fourth evolutionary stage was a step over the cliff called over-civilization. Over-civilization existed when the barbarian virtues were replaced by the easy life, and many believed that modern American life was getting soft. Instead of chopping wood, wrestling a heavy plow, or hunting for dinner, the modern American warmed himself with coal, worked at a desk, and ate hearty meals in cushy restaurants. Now, obviously, that's stated very harshly and, dare I say, very politically incorrect, but he was a product of a very strict religious Dutch family in New York at that time in our history. Also, in full disclosure, the book, I feel, was a negative critique of America's growing empire in the Pacific at the turn of the 20th century. But that passage resonated with me because I feel like we've had it so good in the U.S. for so long that some people feel the need to destroy it. And some of those people are the ones benefiting from the blessings of living in this country. Some want to tear down the social fabric of this country. That is in spite of the fact it's been widely researched that the biggest driver of bringing the largest numbers of people out of poverty is a free market, free society where people can go as far as their ambition and their talents can take them. This is a rarity in all of world history, and that is why the United States is such a special place and why millions of people from all over the world, from every ethnicity and background, still want to get to the United States, to the land of opportunity. Now, is the United States perfect? No, but we are constantly working to improve and change things where they need to be changed in order to make it a more perfect union. Now, I'll just touch on race here as an example. Over 600,000 U.S. citizens died in the Civil War to bring an end to slavery. And the U.S. brought the African American segment of the population closer to having the ability to realize the American dream with the civil rights movement in the 60s. Was slavery disgusting and wrong, and the Jim Crow laws as well? Of course they were, and we are much better off that both those things are gone. We now live in a country that voted for a black president twice, where young white kids root for their black sports heroes and vice versa, where countless individuals have taken advantage of opportunities and have risen to great heights. Were there challenges along the way? Did they overcome some level of racism along the way? Most likely, but it never stopped them, and that's important. Now, if you think I've got blinders on to the plight of Black people in this country, then I can guess where you get your information from. All you have to do is look at Thomas Sowell, Larry Elder, Condoleezza Rice, Dr. Ben Carson, just to name a few. People who get their news from leftist sources may not even know about them because they are on the right side of the aisle and are conservatives. But I invite you to read about them and their work sometime. It's amazing. Have you ever noticed that when a left-wing Black contributor talks about any of these people, the term Uncle Tom always seems to come up? And that's always from the left. It's almost like they resent the fact that those individuals have actually been successful. The question I have is, why would they want them not to be successful? My take is the left wants racial strife to divide us because division is easier to control and manipulate. And many people like Al Sharpton have become very wealthy promoting that division. There is reason why people on the left media outlets don't ever have Thomas Sowell or Larry Elder on. In my view, it's because they demolished the left's narrative that the American dream cannot be attained by Black people or any other non-white group. Over the history of our country, people have talked about what it would take to defeat America. One of the founding fathers even said that the U.S. could never be conquered from the outside and that it would collapse only from rot from the inside. After all, we are so isolated from the rest of the world. Our resources were and are still unmatched. And after World War II, our military and economic might was such that we became one of the mightiest empires in history. And think in terms of the Romans, the British Empire, the Chinese. All of them came and went after approximately 200 years of ruling over the world. We, and I mean anyone who has grown up in this great country since roughly 1960, have not known serious hardship. Over these last 63 years, our country has been rotting from the inside to the point where I'm actually really concerned whether or not it can survive as it was intended. In Andrew Breitbart's book, Righteous Indignation, he has a chapter that talks about how the communist ideology has taken hold in our educational system, and that started in the 60s. So that now you have what we see today, and that is the breakdown of our education system and the pushing of decidedly anti-American sentiment in our youth. So how does this loathing of our way of life play itself out? Think of the protests you see on a regular basis with professional athletes. The most well-known is Colin Kaepernick and his anti-police and law and order position. That has had such a negative impact on the groups and areas that are most affected by a lack of law and order. When cities actually started to defund the police, crime skyrocketed, as you can imagine, to the point where now, after several years of spikes in violent crime, the city of Seattle is now pushing a refund the police movement. Since 2005, I've felt this is a major problem with the United States. It is this crisis that is allowing citizens to really question the greatness of this experiment in self-liberty and governance. It's gotten so bad, in my view, that many of the current woke issues are a direct result of a kind of self-loathing Americans seem to have. A lot of that self-loathing, in my view, is a direct result of the onslaught of negativity from prominent narratives being pushed. For instance, being white is negative, and whites are to blame for all of our social ills. Or if you don't agree with something, you are a hater, promoting violence toward whatever victim group is levying that accusation. Any opposite viewpoint is not tolerated, and that is so un-American. Yes, those things exist, but I argue that it is nowhere near as prevalent or dangerous as the media wants us to believe. The problem is, it seems like a lot of people do believe it. Like I've said in the past, Joseph Goebbels, who was the Nazi minister of propaganda, used to say, if you tell a lie big enough over and over and over again, people will begin to believe it. Now, such evils as systemic racism, hatred of the LGBT groups, and slavery still exist in this world. After all, you see racism in China and in the Middle East. And look at how women are treated in the Middle East and most of the third world. In the Middle East and parts of Africa, it is actually illegal to be homosexual. And in some cases, the punishment is death. And sometimes that's by being thrown off of buildings, if you can believe it. And according to some UN research, there are more than 40 million people today who are living in some level of indentured servitude or outright slavery. Modern slavery and actually killing gay people in 2023, if you can believe that. Most of the world does not think the way Americans do, and we need to understand that and promote that difference. The desire to categorize us into groups of victims allows the powers to be to easily control those groups because they offer what sound like solutions. But in my view, they just want more control over those lives. So what do we do about this rise in self-loathing for our great country? After all, if you don't think this society is good, let alone an amazing social experiment that has never been seen in the history of the world up until the founding of this country, if you don't think that's right, what's the point of trying to defend that way of life? Why not try something new, a better way maybe? But be careful of what is being pitched as the better way, because inevitably that turns into more control by the government over what should be the sovereign individual. So what is the alternative to a free capitalistic society that is being promoted? It's usually a centralized top-down control taking care of all aspects of our life, all in the name of protecting a victimized group. So what do we do about this? My take is we need to reintroduce people to just how special this country is and how it is so delicate an idea that it needs to be constantly protected from those who wish to dismantle it. So how do we do that? Now, if I were king for a day, I would bring back mandatory service for every person of high school graduation age before those kids go to college. That service would ideally be military because I was in the military, but I understand some people would not want that, so I would be okay with service in the Peace Corps or some other group. The idea would be for young people to experience other parts of the world that do not have the same quality of life or living standards or just view on life as we do here in the United States. Also, in the military, it is the quintessential melting pot that everyone should experience because it works. When everyone is trained the same, wears the same uniforms, and have the same goals, the color of one's skin or gender or religion, all those things do not matter when the bullets start flying. Yes, the United States has had a sordid past at times, but the trend has always been to correct the sins of our fathers. And as of right now, the U.S. still really does personify the place where anyone can come and with their efforts can make an amazing life for themselves. In my view, the cast has already been set. The modern version of this self-hatred was put into overdrive after 2016 when Trump was trying to tell the world how great the U.S. was, and there was such a vitriolic pushback. And that leads me back to Brittany Griner. In her old world, she was angry, doing what everyone else was doing, and I dare say, literally following along. But that's just my take, and that, as I obviously don't know who she is and how she feels, but that's just my view of it. Before she did 10 months in a hard labor Russian prison, pleading all the time to the Biden administration to free her, she was so anti-U.S., everything we stood for, she seemed to be against. So my take, the United States has become so soft, so woke as to be almost unrecognizable to me today. We have become weak as the rest of the world feels like they are on the rise. The reason Brittany stands now for the national anthem is because she has actually seen what the world is like, a world without the blessings of the United States. This has always been and will continue to be the land of opportunity. The individual can rise from the poorest of circumstances and still make it here, or the individual can come here with nothing and make for themselves anything they want. The only way to destroy America is from within, to rot the structure of this place. Having been in some of the most impoverished, war-torn parts of the world, I know just how amazing I have it living here in the United States. And because of that, I have a deep appreciation for the blessings we have here and just how incredible the opportunities are for me. The current pressure to bring down the U.S. is actually so dangerous to the freedoms we hold dear. And there is an entity, call it global elites or the World Economic Forum or whatever, who don't think this place is great. And over the last 40 years has promoted that downfall to enough people that now those people actually think it's true. So getting back to my feeling that high school graduates need to leave their comfortable life in the U.S. for 2 years to really understand how amazing this place is and really appreciate where they grew up. A friend of mine, a retired Navy SEAL, thinks it should be just straight military service like the Israelis and not an option to do public service like the Peace Corps. Now, as far as I'm concerned, Peace Corps is okay because the goal is to get these kids out of their comfort zone and actually experience the real world. Now, do I think this would ever happen? Probably not. My point is, we have lived so long in such an amazing, safe environment in the U.S. that we actually want to find ways to break it down. Now, why is that? Is it a feeling of guilt because we've had it so good? This apathy, in my view, is one of the greatest threats to our country's existence. And the old Brittany Griner embodied this feeling. She was, for whatever her motivations were, protesting the blessings of this country until they were taken away. And that is a huge distinction in my view. And that's why I wanted to comment on it. So my take is, a lot of this conflict we are experiencing in the U.S. today is self-inflicted. However, I believe there are forces that are conspiring to bring these supposed conflicts to the fore, and there are plenty of people who want to exploit that feeling. Brittany Griner's change of heart needs to be covered by every mainstream news channel. People need to know of her transformation, and they need to deny Colin Kaepernick's narrative. He has had and has everything, yet he still thinks he's a victim, and I think that's complete nonsense. However, I know that Brittany's situation doesn't fit the current narrative, and Kaepernick's does. So who do you think is going to continue to get news coverage? I feel like we're at a tipping point in our history, in that there are people who think this country's best days are tainted in sin and are behind us. And there are others, like me, who feel this place is unbelievable and needs to be defended. So what do I want? I want citizens to step up to the plate and confront the fact that our amazing country is under attack from within. The United States has always been the shining city on the hill of opportunity, but it has been infiltrated since the 60s by people who think it is horrible. That needs to be confronted and stopped, in my view. All right, so that's basically it. I wanted to comment on the article I read about Brittany Griner and her current situation. So I will end it like I always do, and that is, if you are in the military, the police departments, fire departments, or first responders, if that's you out there, thank you very much for your service. We really appreciate it. Stay safe. This is the Rain Man. Thanks for watching, and we'll talk to you soon. Thanks for watching Rain Man's Take, Observations on the World We Live in. If you like the content, don't forget to hit the subscribe button below. You can also follow Rain Man's Take on Instagram at Rain Man's Take. Also, check out our website at www.rainmanstakepodcast.com and send your comments to rainmanstake@gmail.com. Keep an eye out for future podcasts, which will be coming out every Thursday at 5 p.m. West Coast time.